You either are invited to the dinner party or you're the supper. Decide. And so I want to be in the meetings when they're talking about implementing new things that's going to affect children and pediatricians and bend their minds in a way that they do good. Now, you can judge me because they pay me for this. I am trying to influence people to do better. And I think Scott does the same thing. But I can also understand when the White House says we bought the vaccine from Pfizer, the FDA has not approved it, the CDC has not recommended it, and Scott sits on the board, people start saying this is an annuity for Pfizer. How did this happen? Why? And why should I put my kid's leg so that they can get richer? Does it do good for my kid, or does it just make money for some people? And I think that was a travesty. That was just a travesty because it bled into all kinds of other vaccines in the exam room and the association of Herb Bravo with Scott Gottlieb. I'm not as handsome as he is. I'm not as smart as he is. And I'm not as wealthy as he is. I am just a guy trying to keep your kid healthy in a clinic. That's it. Pretty simple. My life is pretty simple. Anyhow, I want to reminisce quickly about some diseases because of the politics of our country right now. Dr. Offit, what is measles?
And that's the question. And when people say to me, by the way, what do I think we need to do to prepare for the fact that there may be a continued lessening of vaccinating our children? Measles is the answer, because I think young physicians need to be instructed on what measles is. I'm a child of the 50s. Like all children of the 50s, I had measles. That was a time when 3 to 4 million children would get measles every year. About 48,000 would be hospitalized. And when they were hospitalized with dehydration, severe dehydration, and pneumonia, that's what got you into the hospital. 500 children would die every year of measles, mostly children, and about 1,000 would have encephalitis, meaning inflammation and swelling of the brain, of which 250 of that 1,000 would be left with permanent harm. Measles was a bad disease. Measles was something to fear. I heard Jenny McCarthy years ago on Oprah's show saying, I'll take the measles every time because she didn't want to give her child a measles vaccine, measles-containing vaccine, because she thought that would cause autism. What that tells you is that it's not only that we've largely eliminated measles, we've eliminated the memory of measles. People don't remember how sick that virus can make you. But I think what's happened? What's happened is that according to the CDC, there are now more kindergarten vaccine exemptions than ever before. They're over 3%. In some jurisdictions, over 5%. And they predicted in that morbidity and mortality weekly report that there's been a loss of herd immunity. And you're seeing that. Last year, we had 4 outbreaks of measles with about 50 cases. This year, we have 16 outbreaks of measles with about 250 cases. Get to a couple thousand. Measles has a mortality of about 0.1%. So get to a couple thousand cases of measles, which is perfectly possible, and you're going to see measles deaths again. And I don't think people realize how contagious this virus is. We have the flu model or the SARS-CoV-2 COVID model, which has a reproducibility index of about 2 to 4. Measles has a reproducibility index of 18. And here's why. It's not transmitted just by direct person-to-person spread. You just have to be in that person's airspace within 2 hours of them being there. When someone comes into our emergency department with suspected measles and they bring them back to a treatment room, they'll occasionally bring old people like me down to take a look, because I know what measles looks like, because I've had a lot of experience with measles, and measles makes you sick. I can really tell within 30 seconds whether somebody has measles. But let me just tell you one quick story to give you an idea of the contagiousness. This was a story that was reported in New England Journal of Medicine years ago. So there's a story of a 17-year-old girl as part of a church group. She gets on a plane to Romania. She visits an orphanage, she visits a hospital, and then unknown to her, she catches measles. Gets back on the plane, comes back home. Within a couple of days, she goes to a church picnic that involves 500 people. This wasn't a fundamentalist church. People were vaccinated. But so of the 500 people at that picnic, 35 had never been vaccinated and had never been naturally infected. Okay, so she's at the church picnic for 2 hours.